There are certain places in every town that you hear about, perhaps multiple times, before you ever step foot in them. For residents of Ashland, Massachusetts, many of these stories involve a little restaurant located right in the heart of the downtown area. At first glance, Stone's Public House seems like your typical restaurant and bar. A favorite hangout for many of Ashland's residents, Stone's has good food and drink, quality entertainment, and a charming atmosphere. But look a little closer, and you'll be able to see glimpses into the rich history beyond these walls. This establishment has been standing since before Ashland as a town even existed, and as an inn and restaurant has hosted all sorts of people throughout the years. And despite the fact that Stone's hasn't been an inn in decades, rumor has it that certain deceased tenants still wander the halls. It all started in 1832, when Captain John Stone built the railroad boarding house.
The hotel, or the inn, or the pub, depending on the time period that we're talking about, they started building it in 1832 in anticipation of the railroad coming to what was then Unionville.
His name was Captain John Stone. He was a captain in the militia.
John Stone was the guy who knew it before anybody because he put the hotel there. No one, the other brother, would have figured it out, but he did.
He knew where the railroad tracks were coming because his son George was one of the surveyors for the Boston and Worcester Railroad. They were a very upright family. John Stone at the time owned probably most of what we consider to be the downtown area of Ashland.
He was he owned a lot of land. That's why the Stone Park is named Stone Park, because he owned a lot of land around here in downtown.
Stone Park was part of his original property, and it was a farm. I mean, most of downtown was John Stone's farm, really, at that point in time.
And he had a nice livery stable back there, and that barn was part of that. That's back there now, just behind the building there.
John Stone himself was, I think, probably, kind of a pious man, a family man. In the late 80s, there was a disservice done to John Stone himself, and I think to his family, when a gentleman came out who was a hypnotist, and with him he had a psychic, I guess, and they went into the hotel and they did all of the mumbo jumbo and whatnot, and came up with this story of John Stone being involved in a card game and gambling, and that he either on purpose or accidentally hit this fellow over the head who was a traveling salesman, and that they buried him on the farm, and the town hid the story, that nobody that was there that night were all sworn to secrecy. They went so far as to say the body can be found down here in the cellar and whatnot, and they went and they looked and they pointed out the spot, and of course they didn't locate the body. One of the reasons I don't believe it, I almost have a hard time feeling that John Stone would have been playing cards, number one. Number two, John Stone wasn't really active with the hotel. John Stone leased the hotel. John Stone lived in the house next door, but I think as long as he was getting paid for his lease and that he didn't have an active part in the hotel itself. The problem with that type of a myth is that it gets perpetuated. So, for example, when the Travel Channel came out to do their story on John Stone back in 2010, they did a reenactment of that scene. It was a cute scene. The problem was that it perpetuated this story that never existed until the psychic and the hypnotist came up with it in 1987. The problem with it is it leads away from whatever may be true.
When Cappy took over the Ashland Hotel, he changed its name to John Stone's Inn, in honor of the man who built it back in 1834. Despite calling it an inn, the establishment no longer housed guests.
My plan was to have rooms for rent overnight. Always wanted to do that. And we never quite got to it. I gutted out that whole area in the back here. And the area above where the bar is I found out that when we gutted that all out and we're gonna put some rooms in there, that I looked at the structure and it was really kind of cool. It looked like a boat upside down, the way the ceiling was. And I said, I wonder what this was. This was one room at one time. And so I did some more, searching, and I found out that was a ballroom in the 1800s. And I said, well, that's going to be a ballroom again, because I could have a lot of weddings in this place, So I put off the rooms, okay? Because I knew I had the third floor. And I think there was like 8 or 9 rooms up there at least. And, the way it was, but nobody had lived up there in a long time. And when I started renovating, we actually, the electrician said, why don't we disconnect the third floor until we get up there and start working up there, because, you have all this something in knob wiring, and it's dangerous. I said, yeah, I don't want to lose the place now, So they did, and I didn't even have any power up there or anything. We never finished the ballroom because we were too busy. We couldn't do it. We didn't have any time, and I didn't want to put the money in there. We would just, let it go. But I always had it in the back of my head to do it, to make it a real inn.
The ballroom was just one of many discoveries made at the restaurant. Even more intriguing was the accidental unearthing of the hidden room down in the basement. Although one can't really say for sure, Stone's is suspected to have been a stop on the Underground Railroad. In the 19th century, the Underground Railroad was a series of routes and safe houses for slaves escaping to the north. It was used in this part of the country to guide people to Canada.
Even though they would allegedly be safe in the north, the laws were that the owners, quote unquote, could come up and take them back. And a lot of times There were instances where owners came up and took slaves back who were not actually their slaves to begin with. So it was not necessarily a safe place, whereas when they got to Canada, they did have safety. There were sympathies, certainly in Ashland, that would lead one to believe that there may have been stops along the Underground Railroad, and Stones could conceivably have been one of those stops.
Because our business was growing so much, we had to tie into a main sewer line, and that was out in front of the building, and our existing sewer line was in the back. And so we had to go like underneath the new bar area, all the way over toward the cleaners, but down below, to put the sewer pipe out and then go left instead of going right. So we started the construction on that, and there was it's all fieldstone foundation, and when we got to the end wall there, we had to put a hole in it, and my contractor started breaking the wall through, and it was quite thick. I remember him saying it was like 2 stone walls instead of 1. That's how big the foundation was. And anyway, he put the hole in, and then he come running upstairs here. I'm working the bar. I was bartending back then. And he said, Cappy, you gotta come downstairs and see this. So we go down there, there's a hole in the wall. You put a light through there, and he goes, climb up on that box and look through there. Tell me what you see. And I looked through it, and I said, wow. And there was a couple of cots that were all wood and really old, and a water barrel and a couple of old bottles, and then a little handmade ladder, but it was all falling apart now anyway. And there was a hatch in the floor. So anyway, we did some more of it, investigation, and at the time there was a guy from, I think he was from Sudbury. He was pretty good with doing research on old buildings and stuff, and he came and looked at it, and he did a lot of research, and he said that was definitely part of the Underground Railroad. That's why that was there like that, and it was so hidden and so, out of the way, and they went through that trouble to build that wall. They put this in, and they made it look exactly like that was the end of the building, but it wasn't, Because he said, I knew there was something going on because I measured inside, and I got a different measure outside. It was longer outside than it was inside.
Stone's Public House has been featured on multiple television programs and talked about in books, newspapers, and on the radio. But the media attention it receives rarely ever has anything to do with food, drinks, the building's interesting past, or even the role it played in helping slaves to freedom. This pub is best known for something entirely different: ghosts.
I had never heard about a ghost, growing up here in town. That doesn't mean that it didn't happen, because after I, made it known that we thought there was something going on, other people did come and say, oh, we heard that before. So, I don't know what it was. There was nothing really, no big story or anything that I was ever told. When we were building the new bar, the old bar was still open. So, we used to lock up that bar separately so that, the contractors couldn't go in there and nobody could get in there. And we had really big locks on it, and they were already there for some reason, I don't know why, but maybe just to keep the tenants from going down there at night, I'm sure that's what it was about. So we had really good locks on there, on the inside and the outside. And we would work pretty late most nights. And then the bar would close and we'd still be here, and then we'd lock up. One morning I came in and one of the doors was unlocked. And I knew that we had locked it. I said to Dennis, I said, didn't we lock this up? He goes, yeah, we locked it up. You know, I said, well, that's weird, you know, but nothing was missing. There was no big deal, so we let it go. And then about a week later, I came in first alone, and 2 of the doors were left open. And I forget who was working later than me, and they said they'd lock it up, and I called them on the phone, and I said, hey, you left the doors open. You didn't lock the doors. He goes, I locked the doors. He goes, I'm not gonna leave without locking the doors. I left at 3 o'clock this morning. What are you calling me for? I'm trying to sleep. I said, well, I'm trying to figure out why these doors are unlocked. He goes, I don't know. He says, maybe it's a ghost. I said, yeah, maybe. And I didn't give it any more thought. But then the next day, I came in again with somebody else, and I don't remember who that was, but all 3 doors were unlocked. I talked to the guy that was there, his name was John. I said, John, you know, that I accused of not locking it. I said, hey, John, I think we do have a ghost. And I was still half kidding. And he goes, you know, I thought I heard something outside the door, kind of like scratching on the door. I said, the outside door? And he said, no, the inside door. He said, I threw both the bolt locks, those 2 bolt locks are on there. He goes, and I opened the door to see what was going on, and there was nothing there. And he goes, I just got a weird feeling. He goes, yeah, maybe there is a ghost. So we started kind of making a joke about it and talking about it. But then a couple of the people in the new bar, when they were working in there, they said, yeah, you know, we've heard some really weird noises in here, especially early in the morning when we come in to work. Everybody's start talking about it, mostly just the work people here. And then it just grew into customers saying, weirdest thing happened to me here. I was sitting right there by that door where you keep your wine in that closet. I'm not kidding you. I felt somebody put their hand on my shoulder. And my husband was sitting across from me, and I just went, ah, like that. And I looked, and there was nothing there. And he said, what are you doing? And she said, somebody just grabbed me by the shoulder. He goes, how can they grab you? You're up against a door and a wall. Now, she didn't even know about any ghost stories at all. And one of the waitresses came over, and she told the waitress, and the waitress goes, well, we do think we might have a ghost, like that. Now, I had told the waitresses not to really talk, and everybody else not to talk to customers about this, because I didn't know how they would take it. And for some reason, I thought it might just scare people away, and I couldn't afford that. Within 2 or 3 months, it took on a life of its own. I mean, people, waitresses, customers, my wife swears that something grabbed her, you know, by the shoulders and went like this one time, and she never would think she'd say that, you know. The thing that really made it take off in the media was there was a gentleman having lunch at the bar. I was bartending, and there was only one other person there. I just opened up, and he just ordered lunch, and he was reading something, and I'd never seen him before. And then this guy came in, and he was a regular, and he sat down, and I gave him his Miller Lite or whatever it was, and he had back then you could smoke cigarettes in the bar, and we had these glass ashtrays, you know, the thick ones, and he lit a cigarette, you know, and he put it in the ashtray, and this other customer came in and said, hey, I heard what happened last night with the ghost. And he knew the other gentleman sitting at the bar. I said, what happened? He goes, oh, somebody heard a little girl upstairs singing a song when they were starting to close, and it was, kind of quiet in here, and they heard us singing like a little ditty. And he said, so now you got a little girl ghost. And the guy that had the cigarette he took it out of his mouth again, and he says, I can't stand this anymore. This stupid ghost story, Cappy, you made all that up. You just wanted the publicity. That's all this is about. There's no such thing as ghosts. There's no ghosts here. There never will be a ghost here. And you know what? I'm not gonna be here anymore either, because I'm never coming back here. And he threw some money down. He took his cigarette, put it on the ashtray, and put it out. And the ashtray just shattered apart, just fell apart in a million little glass pieces. The guy at the end that was there first, reading the paper or whatever he was doing, called me over and he said, hey, listen, he pulls out his business card and hands it to me, and he says, I'm a reporter with the Boston Globe, and I'd like to do a story on this. I never, subscribed to any of that my whole life. Nobody in my family did, and it wasn't like it was something that we did. There's ghosts everywhere. We didn't know, and that's what made it really take off, and really take on a life of its own, and it grew from there.
It wasn't long before other media outlets began noticing the restaurant. Over the years, Stone's Public House has been featured on many television shows, including Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America, Discovery Channel's Ghost Lab, and Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters. It has also been featured in many books and radio shows.
And we had a lot of media coverage. I mean, we had Evening Magazine, Chronicle. After that, they both did at least 4 shows on it, 3 or 4 shows each. I don't remember exactly how many. All the local papers did stories on it left and right, and then local radio stations, they do interviews with me and stuff like that. But I had NPR, they did a couple of them. Then they started doing one with me every Halloween.
The Discovery Channel did a show. That was Ghost Lab. There were 4 or 5 members of the cast. The people would come in with an open mind and see what they could find with all their fancy equipment. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there isn't a little bit of theater, should I say, involved in it, but for the most part, these people at least did come in and do a credible job. I was quite pleased with the Ghost Lab people. I personally have an EVP, or an electronic voice phenomenon, as they call it, that I obtained at Stone's several years ago. I think it was in 2010. I was down at Stone's with another person who was researching the property, and we were sitting at the bar. I had a small tape recorder, electronic tape recorder, that I had sitting on the bar in front of me, and we were just talking back and forth. So we were there for a little over 2 hours. There were people behind me. There were people all along the bar up to where the musicians were playing. Later I went home and played the tape. I was doing something on the computer, and I just plugged it in and listened to it. And all of a sudden I went, whoa, wait a minute, what was that? Out of 2 hours of background bar noise, so you can barely hear me talking to the person next to me, and I've got the tape recorder pretty much right in front of me, within a few feet. And my voice is low, and you hear the people talking, background noise, you can hear the music in the background. And all of a sudden, this voice says, "Titty ran, he missed it." And I listened to it and I said, whoa. Now, I know that nobody came up and held this thing up and said, "Titty ran, he missed it." And yet, it was a totally different voice.
Titty ran, he missed it.
And it took me for quite a while to sort that out. There was a constable, later a policeman and a deputy sheriff here in Ashland named George Tidsbury. And they called him Titty. He was probably involved there from about 1880 until 1920, so he was known to the Scots and probably to Julius Knight as well.
You know, I never saw one. A lot of the people that claim they saw one I have a lot of confidence in, and they don't make things up. My wife's aunt and her husband used to work for me. She cooked during the day and opened up the kitchen. She didn't say anything for a long time, but she was leaving. They had to go back to where was it? Ohio, where they came from, to help a family member. So they had to move back there. She said, "But before I go, I have to tell you something." She said, "I know everybody says the place is haunted, and I didn't put any credence in that because I never believed in ghosts in my life. But 4 or 5 times now, over the last 6 or 8 months, when I come in the door, I look over to the left because that's the way you go, you know." And she said, "I always just kind of look over there first before I go around the ovens and into the main kitchen." She said, "I saw a little girl one day looking out the back window by the end of the building." And I said, "What's this little girl doing here?" And I said, "Who are you?" And she looked over at me and she smiled, gave me the most beautiful smile. It wasn't scary and everything. And then it just disappeared. And I said, "Come on." And she goes, "This is why I didn't want to tell anyone, but I can't leave here without telling you. I want to show you exactly where it is and what it does." I said, "Well, great, because now I got to come in early and do what you do, and now I'm going to see the ghost." And she said, if I was you, I would fully expect to, because I had Amand, her husband, come in first, and he saw her. And he was freaking out because he's never seen anything like that. So I said, "Oh boy." So the next morning I come in, and I'm like, "I'm not going to see a ghost, you know, it's crazy, you know." I wasn't really that worried about it, okay? So I walk in the door, and I stopped, and I looked over there anyway, right? Yeah, there's no one there. I said, no problem. So I went about, turned on the lights and this and that, and I went out there to get something, because the walk-in box is right there too. I get something out of there. Anyway, I go walking in there, and I look. In the window that she said the little girl was looking out was all smashed out, outside, you know, from the inside out. And all the glass is broken. And I said to myself, "That's weird." And then I thought, holy crap, maybe the little girl wanted to go with her. I said, "Oh, stop it, don't even say that stuff," you know. And so my wife came in and I showed her, and she goes, "Oh, that's the little girl going after my aunt, guaranteed." She knew she was going, and so she came in. My aunt didn't come in. "Did you hear the glass breaking?" And I said, "No, I didn't hear anything." And she goes, "I guarantee you that's what happened. That's too much of a coincidence."
One of the spirits that seems to be well known by everybody at Stone's Pub is Mary, who was allegedly Mary Smith, who was a young girl who in 1863 was struck by cars. And that is documented. I mean, that is a fact. And there is talk of the bloody dress that was found in the attic of the inn, and Mary has been seen by many people. Now, again, being a bit of a skeptic myself, I'm not sure that Mary actually ever was taken to the inn while the doctor was called. I don't know that it was her bloody dress that was found in the attic. A bloody dress was found in the attic. It's still there. It's still in the hotel. The ghost lab did capture an image of a young girl in the hall. There have certainly been many, many other people who have cited or heard a young girl in the hotel. One instance was one of the bar managers at the hotel, a recent bar manager, used to go in the morning to prepare for the day. There was one day that his daughter didn't have school, and he basically took his daughter along with her, whether it was a snow day or just a day off. And he took his daughter, young daughter, in with him. He was at the bar. His daughter was on one side of the room playing. He was getting caught up in the book. He heard a giggle, and it kind of struck him as a little bit odd, but he didn't think too much of it. You know, he just thought it was his daughter giggling, but it wasn't quite her giggle, and it seemed to be coming from the other side of the room. And but he didn't give it much thought. Well, a few days later, or a week or so later, his daughter said, "Gee, Dad, can I go back to work with you again?" He says, "I want to play with that little girl."
My mother was assured that there was a ghost in the hotel. And she says, if you look real hard, there's two windows coming off the roof. 2 or 3, but there's at least. And she says she appears in those windows on certain nights.
I was here one night, and it was just me and my bar manager, and we were closing it up. And I needed a ride home because I wasn't drunk. My car was in the shop, and he was going to give me a ride home. And it was snowing like heck. So we closed it all up, shut everything off, and we went out the back door. And he was parked across the street by the old railroad station. When we got to his car and we got in it, the car was facing directly across the street looking at the inn. And he didn't want to take the time to brush the snow off outside, lazy, because he thought his windshield wipers could do it. And they did. They started moving it finally. You know, I'm like, let me go out there. And he, no. The windshield wipers are gone, but it was really snowing hard. And I looked over at the inn, and all the lights were on in the inn. And I said, Tony, look at this. All the lights are on. He goes, holy. He says, we just closed up. We just shut everything off. He goes, didn't we? I said, yeah, we did. And I said, that's unreal. I can't believe it. And he goes, well, there's something going on. He goes, it's a shot or something that this storm is doing, because it was really blowing too. It was like a blizzard, you know. And I said, I would think that too, Tony, but I'm not buying that. And he goes, why not? And I go, because there's lights on the 3rd floor too. And he goes, so what? And I go, there's no power on the 3rd floor. The electricians cut that off last year. And there's no electricity up there. There's no lights. Where are the lights? There's lights up there. And he says, I was just going to tell you I'm going to go back in and shut everything off and check the doors. He goes, that deal's off. He goes, I'm not going back in there. I said, I'm not going back in there either. I said, let's go home. He says, really? You leave all the lights on? I said, I don't even care if the doors are open. I'm not going back in there.
And I mean, if you hear these stories once, you know, you might question it, but to hear credible people saying this year in, year out, day after day, it certainly leads one to wonder. Stones today is a very, very nice place to visit. The food is excellent, very congenial atmosphere in there. One of the things I love about going into Stones is you just kind of, in a way, feel like you're stepping back in time, and it's just a very warm, comforting feeling to it, and the current owners have continued that feeling, that sense of maybe coming home.
And I always wanted to do something with this building, and you know, I did it for the town, really, in my heart. I know I did. I didn't say that to a lot of people because I was young and that would have been real corny, you know. I look back and I say, you know, when I was 7 or 8 years old when I said to Herbie Bodwin the first time that if you're ever going to sell it, let me know. And I look back at that, I said, you know, was that God telling me to do that? I mean, you know, where did that come from, you know? And so I guess I was meant to be. The whole experience was a blessing. I enjoyed every day here. I used to jump out of bed. I couldn't get here fast enough in the morning, and that's the truth. And work all day and then work all night. It didn't bother me. Of course, I was a lot younger then. But it was just such a part of me, and it still is. When I come here, I look around.
One of the reasons I love the hotel so much is being built in 1834 in the center of what it was to become Ashland. The hotel has been standing there watching the town grow around it.
I think what you should remember is Ashland has to be a pretty proud community to have an icon like that start there and continue there through, what, 200 years of existence. And never get changed, never get taken down, never get nothing. It's the same building that John Stones opened the door to 200 years ago. And all the woodwork and all the structure is still intact. And that to me is a wonderful idea of the construction that was really done in those days, and the fact that we had enough sense to keep it.
But when we got to his car, half-price drinks. Anybody want one?